Hi, I'm Blake, founder of Team Pickleball. Today we have Noe Sariban. Did I say that right?
Sariban, yeah, Sariban.
Sariban. Okay, shoot. I was like, going to get that wrong. He
Sorry.
is known as the Pickleball Doctor. We're going to talk kind of through a bunch of different things, but ultimately kind of how to prevent injuries, how to warm up, how to kind of maintain performance on the pickleball court, and just kind of talk about your background. So we can just dive right in, maybe tell us who you are, kind of why people should be interested in what you're doing.
Sure. So yeah, my name is Noah. I am an avid pickleball player. I've been involved in pickleball for about 8 years now. I used to compete at what used to be the pro level. This was before the APP and the PPA were around.
Sure.
Um, but then 2020 hit with COVID and all that, and so I kind of stopped competing at that point, and it just wasn't making a whole lot of financial sense for the outcomes that I would probably get out of a professional tournament. So it just financially didn't make sense to continue to compete. But I'm also a doctor of physical therapy. So I went to Duke University in North Carolina for physical therapy school. And for the past couple of years, I've been working with Ben Johns. So I'm on his team for physical therapy and, whatever he needs me for, really.
Right.
I used to play against Ben 6 years ago.
Sure.
And so, you know, having a good pickleball background is also helpful to be around him and to, if he needs any of that kind of thing, I'm certainly able to discuss things with him um, when it relates to pickleball as well. So it's always good as a medical professional, or at least for physical therapists, if they're highly skilled in the activity that they're specializing in, then it's kind of a good I don't know. It's a good segue into being able to treat those athletes appropriately because you know what is required in the sport, basically.
Sure. And so is
Um,
that kind of how you migrated kind of into more specifically pickleball in that regard, or?
the pickleball doctor kind of started randomly about 7 years ago, I think now. There's something called, the pickleball forum on Facebook,
Sure.
which at the time Aspen Kern was the founder of that. And I joined the pickleball forum when there was probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 thousand people in it. I think
Yeah.
it's like 128,000 plus at this point.
Sure.
Um, so it used to be very small, and where I started playing pickleball is actually where Aspen used to live, so I knew him and stuff like that. And so, um, basically people used to go there and just like they do now, post and ask questions and stuff like that. And there was so much bad information related to injuries or what to do or
Sure.
treatments and things like that, that I was just like, you know what, maybe I'll just start something. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I play pickleball at a very high level. I coach pickleball. So I kind of blended those two things together, and the pickleball doctor kind of came about. So at first it was just kind of a website with information for pickleball players, just free. Um, and then it just kind of stuck, I guess. And
Yeah.
so, um, the fact that I played against Ben and had a relationship with him in terms of, playing, and I already knew him. And so I just, over the years, I told him, hey, if you ever get to the point where you need a physical therapist for, tournament coverage, things like that, keep me in mind. And, one thing led to another, and basically started working out with him. And yeah, it's been pretty great so far. So
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's super cool to kind of hear how that transition happened and where the name
yeah.
came from. So yeah, I guess the first thing we can start with is just like preventing injuries, just kind of generally.
Okay.
I know it seems like every time I'm down at the court, like it seems like someone comes and they're like, oh, I hurt myself, and they're unsure if they should even be there, right? Um,
Yeah.
so preventing injuries, like I know that's kind of a big broad topic of what could be considered that, but what are like some key aspects people could do to kind of make sure they're not getting injured while playing pickleball?
Yeah. I think even before talking about preventing injuries, I
Sure.
think that there's a lot of people that have either interviewed me or asked me questions about injuries and pickleball.
Yeah.
And the big thing is like these articles that are coming out saying that pickleball is causing all these injuries and blah blah. And it's
Yeah.
like,
Sure.
and the thing is, what people don't realize is that participation in pickleball has skyrocketed in the
Yeah.
past, let's say, 5 years.
Right.
And so, of course, injuries are going to go up.
Hmm.
Like, and then, so when you increase participation in something, there's going to be more injuries related to that sport.
Exactly.
And the other portion of it is that, let's call it 7 years ago, no one knew about pickleball. Like when I was playing, people who were playing maybe knew, but no one had ever heard of it.
Yep.
Um, and it's been getting younger, but still the average age of the pickleball player out there is probably 50 or older. I don't
Hmm.
know. It's getting younger by the day, but it's still, there's a
Yep.
lot of older people still playing. And so, and they're not just playing, they're playing 5, 6, 7 times a week for multiple
Hmm.
hours.
Yep.
And so the usage rate is really high on an older population. And so when you take that into consideration, it's like, well, of course there are going to be injuries. Like
Right.
there's no other sport out there where 70-year-olds are playing 6 times a week for 4 hours at a time. Like if they
Yeah.
tried to play basketball at that rate, they would be in the grave already.
Right.
And so it's maybe not in the grave, but they would be very, very sore and probably not, it wouldn't be possible basically.
Sure.
And so basically what I think I'm trying to get to is that pickleball is in kind of a unique circumstance where it's very addictive. People play it a lot.
Hmm.
The average age is older. And so that all leads to, of course, a rise in injuries,
Yeah.
related to the sport. So,
Yeah.
people try to paint it as a bad, like, why is it causing more injuries?
Sure.
I don't think it's more injuries than any other sport. If you put the same people in other sport with the same intensity, they would
Sure.
be just as hurt. It was
Right.
just so, pickleball in itself, I don't think is riskier than any other activity, basically.
For sure. I totally agree with that. Yeah. No.
But when it comes to preventing injuries, there it depends on who you're talking about. If you're talking about just average people that are just getting started, there's basic things you can do to make sure that you're not putting yourself in bad positions. Um, Number one is probably the footwear.
Sure.
I think a lot of injuries initially are probably caused by falls. And what people don't realize, especially beginners or people who've never really been on a tennis court, is how gritty the surface is.
Mm.
Um, a pickleball court and tennis court have a textured acrylic paint that has sand in the paint. And
Mm.
so if you actually run your hand across the surface, it's very gritty. It's like sandpaper almost.
Right.
And the average sneaker out there, the rubber on the bottom of the sole is way too soft for that kind of surface. It's not made for that. So
Hmm.
people who are on the court with running shoes or training shoes, fitness shoes, whatever, the rubber at some point is going to get caught when you're moving on the court. Rubber gets caught, tip over, you fall, maybe you land on your wrist, now you hurt
Yep.
your wrist.
Sure.
And so one of the big things is I'm not saying people need to go buy shoes just to try it, but if
Right.
someone tries it and they like pickleball and they like, I'm probably going to play this, let's say
Hmm.
a couple times a week, which
Yeah.
will likely turn into 18 times a week. Um,
Yeah.
but at least at first, it's like the investment of 80 to $100 to get a pair of shoes that's made for a court. So
Yeah.
court tennis shoes or pickleball shoes,
Hmm.
I think is definitely worth it to reduce the possibility of falling. So
Yeah.
that's like a quick thing you can easily fix. Now the other thing about injuries that we tend to see is when people start playing pickleball, they don't really know the sport. And what I mean by that is their brain and body don't really know the movements required
Mm.
in order to play pickleball. And so a lot of it, like just like when you start anything new, you're going to be very reactive instead of anticipating.
Sure. Yeah.
And so reacting to movements that you're not sure how to perform leads to poor positioning, which then can lead to injury. And so one thing to do is really to spend some time learning the actual game. It's like you go on YouTube and type pro pickleball and watch just a few matches just to see what it looks like, to
Mhm.
understand the sequence of the game, where you're supposed to be on the court.
Right.
And because as soon as you start to understand the game and positionally where you're supposed to be, then you're going to have a better time adjusting to what happens on the court. So, um, but again, the less skilled you are on the court or the less familiar you are with the sport, you're going to be making errors positionally and
Yep.
expecting certain things, and that's when you move a certain way. And when the ball goes one way, you expect it to go the other because you're unfamiliar with it. Maybe you
Yep.
roll an ankle or whatever the case may be. So just like you would with a board game, if you were to go and someone laid out Monopoly for the first time and you never heard of it, you wouldn't know how to play. So it's the same kind of thing. You have to learn the game, learn the basic strategy so that you understand what can come, what can happen. And I think that will make the movement on the court better.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I think that's a huge call out for sure, especially for new
uh,
players, because I think they jump in thinking it's going to be just, super easy, whatever. This looks so easy. And then,
yeah.
yeah.
Which fair enough, because the great thing about pickleball is that you can pick it up easily
Yep.
within 5 minutes. You
Yep.
can start playing a game. Now, the people who start and play in 5 minutes, they're not gonna be very good,
Right.
but they'll have fun.
Yep.
And the
That's,
problem sometimes part of the problem with pickleball is that it's too much fun. And that leads to a couple of problems. One, people are having fun right away, so they're gonna keep doing what they're doing. Two, they're not gonna take time to necessarily learn the actual essence and strategy of the game because they're already having fun at the basic level.
sure.
And so then that leads into warming up properly to play the sport, because it is a sport, even though some people still think it's a silly game.
Right.
It requires athletic movement out there. And this is something that's very, very unique to pickleball, is that the warm up is very poor for the average player.
Yes.
Um,
I can attest to that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, people show up at the courts, couple of dings, couple of shots. Yep, I'm good to
Hmm.
go, and then we
Right.
go ahead and we play.
Yep.
Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. One, courts are packed, so people get to the courts, they're already packed. They finally get on the court, while they need to start playing right away. Okay, that's not great. Two, they show up at the park. There's already three people on the court. They're like, "Hey, we need one. Come on, quick!" No, they put the pressure. Like, "All right,
Hmm.
great." And then 2 minutes later, you're lunging for a ball, and
Right.
you pull your hamstring. So it's very strange. I've never seen anything like it. I've been in athletics my whole life, and for every sport out there, there's usually a good warm up time. If you've ever
Right.
been an athlete playing a
Yeah.
sport, you don't show up to the game without having warmed up. I mean, if you watch the pros, they're just full sweat prior to the game starting. So
Right.
I'm not saying the average player needs to do that, but having some kind of routine to properly warm up your body is just, even if you don't hit a single ball,
Yeah.
if your
On the
muscles and body,
sidelines.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, if your muscles and your body are up to temperature, your risk of injury is going to go down dramatically. And so that doesn't take much. You can do it within 5-10 minutes. You can, anything you would consider warming up, you can jog around, you can do some high knees, you can do some butt taps, you can do some side steps, some arm movements, wrist movements. I mean, it doesn't matter what you do. You can do some squats. You can just do something that's going to get your heart rate up. It's going to get the blood flowing. It's going to increase your body temperature. And that's what you really need.
Sure.
There's obviously more pickleball specific warm-ups that you can get into. There's videos out there. I've got a couple of videos on YouTube that people can watch. I mean, it's nothing, it's not rocket science. It's been done for other sports.
Yeah.
If you've ever played any other sport, for the most part, people know more or less how to warm up, but it's just that people don't do it.
Yep.
And I also have people tell me, well, I live 20 minutes away, but I warmed up at home. Like, okay, you
Yeah.
just sat in your car for 20 minutes. You're not warmed up anymore. Like, it
Right.
doesn't work that way.
Right.
So, or,
Exactly.
or, you know, or you play in the evening and you're like, you guys need to warm up. He's like, oh no, it's good. I played this morning. It's like, oh, okay, but that was hours ago. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, you know, the stuff that happens off the court is not the fun part.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the warming up, the cooling down, the strength training, the fitness, like all that stuff is not, some people like to do it, but overall it's not as fun as playing the game. And so
Right.
when people are not professional athletes and they have limited amount of time during their week because they work or whatever, and they
Y-
finally have some time to, have fun or blow off some steam, and they want to go play pickleball, they don't want to spend necessarily the time to do the other things. It's like, I mean, I get
Yeah.
it. People are
Yeah.
busy and they've got limited time, and
Right.
you sometimes just want to do the most fun with that amount of free time. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. For sure.
you know,
So I guess on the same note, let's talk to maybe the people that are very familiar with the sport. Maybe they have the right shoes.
mhm.
Um, maybe they're just a little bit older, so injuries a little bit more prone. Maybe is it just a matter of warming up for them as well, or is there something, you know? I guess like I go down the court and there's 6-year-olds that have been there go every day, and but
Sure.
every once in a while there's something that they tweaked or did this and that. Is this purely warm up, and then also we can maybe talk to like should they keep playing if they are hurt? Should they how
Right,
should
right. So no, warming up is just a part of it, right? So again, nothing is like black and white. So you can do everything right and you could still get hurt. That's,
sure.
that's sports.
Yep.
But what you need to do is you need to try to mitigate the risk, and you do that by approaching it various ways. So warming up is just a way to increase your body temperature to get your muscles ready for activity. Not It doesn't mean that if you don't warm up, you will get hurt. It just means that if you don't, your chances might be higher.
Sure.
And so, there's other things off the court that can be certainly beneficial, such as, regular fitness training. So, um, again, is it a pure correlation that people who work out are going to get hurt less? Maybe not. But, if you can work on agility so that your footwork is good, then you're going to move better on the court. If you can work on your strength and your endurance, where maybe you don't get as tired, maybe you don't make a mistake positionally and you don't get hurt. So it's just
Right.
like, it's kind of like if you think of a professional athlete in a different sport, most of their hard work happens in the off season. So they train, they get in shape, they eat well, they do all the things that they can to maximize their performance so that they can reduce their risk of injury. But plenty of them still get hurt all the
Right.
time. And so it's just the nature of doing and performing activities is that people are going to get hurt. It's just by doing kind of a, I don't know, whole approach to your health in terms of working out, eating right, sleeping enough, hydrating enough, all that stuff, then maybe you have a chance of decreasing your injury risk. That's really the key. But that's not just for pickleball. That would be for any sport.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes
Um,
sense. Yep.
and so, but there are pickleball specific movements that you could
Yep.
train more, such as certain lunges that are needed to get to some balls, certain squats. Footwork is probably the most underlooked thing in pickleball that people don't work enough on. If you can move properly for pickleball, and what I mean is not necessarily quickly, it's just appropriately and
Right.
efficiently,
Yep.
um, then you have a lower chance of hurting yourself. Ben Johns is not the most athletic person, nor is he the fastest, but he is probably one of the more efficient ones in terms of
Sure.
his movement.
Yeah.
And so being efficient movement wise on the court means that you're often positioned properly. And when you're positioned properly, then your injury risk is going to go down when you try to hit a ball, basically.
Sure. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's also why the 7-year-olds are schooling us down at the court because they're positioned correctly. They've been playing and they know where to be. At
Well,
least where I'm at. But
well, 7-year-olds or kids in general, you say 70 or 7?
well, both actually, but 70-year-olds too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So younger people obviously have just more pliability in
Yeah.
their
Yeah. Yeah.
tissue,
Yeah.
and so you can, like, if you've ever seen a little baby, you can basically bend their
Yeah.
knees and arms, and they're just kind of very flexible. So their risk of hurting themselves is lower. Now you combine that with their quickness and things like that. Well, they're probably not going to hurt themselves as
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Um, Compare that to older people who don't move as well as they used to, and things like that. Well, that's going to make a difference for sure.
Yeah. No, for sure. Should we transition kind of maybe more into insights with like professional players? Obviously, you work with Ben Johns. Is there anything kind of unique that you've gleaned from working with him on more of like we don't get insights to professional players a lot. So,
Sure.
what is that like,
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit tricky for, so let me maybe tell people what I do
Yeah.
for Ben. So I'm based in North Carolina. He's based out of Austin, Texas. For him, it's very central. It's easy to get to tournaments and stuff from there. So I'm not with him on a regular basis at his
Yep.
house or
Sure.
where he lives. I travel with him to tournaments, for the PPA tournaments, basically. And the difficult part of that is that obviously it's mostly just coverage during the tournament. So most of what we focus on is recovery Obviously warming up, but he doesn't really need me for that. Although I help him with some of that stuff.
Yep.
And obviously, if something occurs during the tournament that he needs addressing, then we try to address as best we can. The difficult part of that is that physical therapy in the short term is not always, I don't want to say as effective, but it's like, let's say if someone has some kind of injury, it's usually not fixed in a couple days. It doesn't
Sure.
happen that way. So, you know, what we can do is try to manage it in the short term by using different techniques or taping or, dry needling or just kind of direct treatment approaches, which sometimes can provide some short term relief. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not the best setting for successful physical therapy, if that
Sure.
makes sense.
Sure.
Um, but I mean, of course, it doesn't hurt to have someone there because and I actually I've treated other players during tournaments if something happens to them, like someone rolls an ankle, um, and there's no one really available, they'll check with me and Ben and see if it's okay if I check them out. And that's happened where, yeah,
Yeah.
like let me tape your ankle and maybe they can finish out the day. So sometimes it is helpful to have someone there. We do we use as much things that are available to us to maximize Ben's recovery. Um, but there's nothing out there that's going to work for everyone. And
Sure.
so, we've kind of tried various things. Some things work, some things don't really do much. And so it's kind of like it's hit or miss with what you would typically think of as interventions for maximizing recovery. The science and really the evidence behind maximizing recovery is not ideal. It's not great.
Sure.
You'll always have anecdotes and people like just
Yeah.
telling you, oh, you got to do this because this works so well. It's like, great,
Sure.
that worked for you,
Yep.
but it's not. It's just whether you look at ice baths or compression or whatever it is, there's no pure formula that's going to work for everyone. That's for sure.
Sure. So is that
But
just something you guys have tried a lot and just kind of figured out specifically what works for, and it's probably still trying stuff, but
yeah, and the funny thing is that Ben actually is pretty low maintenance.
sure.
He doesn't feel like a lot of things seem to make a huge difference. Stretching is probably one that seems to help.
Yeah.
But again, it's sometimes you got to go trial and error, and if something is slightly helpful,
Yeah.
at the pro level, then maybe it's worth it. And
Right.
that's kind of where, versus the average Joe, well, okay, if it's like you're 0.1% less sore the next day, does it
Sure.
really matter? It's like,
Sure.
so, it's been interesting to um, see that aspect because it's like, it's pickleball is an interesting sport in terms of tournament play. It's for those guys, it's like, number one, they have a lot of events.
Mhm.
It's a pretty heavy schedule. Two, Ben plays all three events, so mixed doubles, men's doubles, and singles,
Yeah.
which means it's a lot of matches for him. And so there's really not that much time. Number one, in between tournaments to address injuries, and number
Sure.
two, at tournaments to address things. So you're trying your best. You're really obviously I want
Uh-huh.
nothing but the best for him, and when we're
Right.
there, we're trying to maximize everything we can. But it's like at some point, if and I guess the good part is that he hasn't experienced a severe injury to this
Right.
point. But it's like if someone gets hurt, they're going to have to take time off to actually really address that and take care of that. So,
Yeah. So
um,
so I guess
yeah.
moving into someone being hurt, what's like your recommendation there?
So let's talk maybe about acute injuries first. So
Sure.
you're on the court, something happens, right? What doesn't matter what the injury is. You pull a muscle, you roll an ankle, you whatever. Um, there's different approaches and different opinions on this. So what I say might not be what someone else would say. I go with what has always made sense to me on top of my education. So,
Sure.
um, I play a lot of sports. I've gotten hurt. Nothing too bad that it ever ended my careers, and so to speak. But um, the first thing that people will always do on a court when someone gets hurt is, oh, let me get you some ice.
Sure.
and it's ice and ibuprofen. That's usually it's usually something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm not really in that camp.
Okay.
Um, there used to be a doctor, and I forget his name, but the guy who came up with the RICE acronym. RICE is rest, ice, compress, and elevate.
Okay.
And so that was that. I think the guy came up with that like in the 70s or 80s or something like that. And for 30 or 40 years, that's been the thing that athletics go to. You get
Sure.
hurt, you RICE, like
Yep.
and then that has been what people. That's why people go to it. You ice it when you're hurt, and a lot has changed since that person came up with that,
Sure.
and a lot has changed in sports science and the understanding of things. And but still, the average doctor out there, if you go to urgent care, they will tell you put some ice on things. That's just what happens. Um, And I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong. I'm saying that there's other ways to look at it. So the guy who came up with that actually now says that you shouldn't ice anymore.
Sure.
So, you know,
Yeah.
knowledge changes and fat and opinions change and
Yep.
medical advice changes. And so, but people don't know that as much.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, whenever you get hurt, there's an inflammatory process that takes place. And ice and ibuprofen are seen as reducing inflammation.
Sure.
However, the inflammatory process is a natural process that occurs in your body and is there for a reason.
Right.
And so when you try to suppress that reaction, you may potentially be decreasing your healing response.
Sure.
And so icing something, while it does numb it and it might bring the pain down, you might actually be inhibiting the inflammatory process, which then would lead to a longer recovery overall. Same
Sure.
thing with using ibuprofen or anti-inflammatory drugs. And so what I usually tell people is that if you do hurt yourself, don't use ibuprofen, don't use ice if you can stand it. So
Mhm.
if the pain is bad enough that you can't stand it, first of all, you should probably go to the ER if it's
Sure.
that bad.
Yep.
But two, let's say it's just a pain that's just really bothersome, nothing great enough to get you to an emergency room, but really hurting, and you want to numb it down or tune it down, sure. Take some ibuprofen and use some ice, because the benefit of decreasing the pain outweighs the potential decreased healing response in that moment.
Sure.
Right. But if the pain is like, yeah, I hurt myself, and yes, it's not comfortable, but I'm not dying here and I can withstand the pain, then don't ice it.
Yep.
Don't use ibuprofen. There's no need for that. Your body is going to start the healing response as soon as it can.
Sure.
And so the other thing that you need to do is you need to encourage early motion, early movement of whatever you hurt. So let's take a sprained ankle, for example.
Hmm.
As of course it's going to hurt. If it's a bad sprain, it's going to hurt
Sure.
for the first day. You're not going to
Yep.
want to stand on it. You're not going to want to walk on it. Fine. But if you're lying in bed and your foot's on your bed, you can certainly try to move your foot up and down
Hmm.
and try to get some early motion, because what that's going to do is it's going to start moving the fluid in and out of the ankle. And
Okay.
so the fluid that accumulates, the swelling, the stagnant fluid is really what's not great. What
Mm.
we want is we want increased blood flow, because blood brings all the nutrients, and the healing mechanism is really boosted by increased blood flow.
Sure.
So early motion, some light resist. So if you take again the example of an ankle, you could just move the foot. You could put a little resistance band around the foot and you could push into it. Elevation would be good to get some of the fluid back towards the heart.
Mm.
Compression is good because, again, you want to get some of that fluid out. I would, if people like to put heat, go ahead and use heat, because heat is a vasodilator. So you're going to, again, try to get that more blood flow into the area. Now, the flip side of that is that people will say, well, if you ice it, then after you're done icing, you'll get a vasodilation response, but you vasoconstricted before that. So it's kind of
Sure.
back and forth. The bottom line is I'm not a huge fan of ice.
Yeah. Sure.
But again, if someone has used ice their whole life and they've been hurt and they say, man, this just helps me so much, then go ahead and do it. I'm never going to
Yeah.
tell someone not to do something if it works for them.
Yeah.
It's just that I've never liked ice. I don't like how it feels when I'm hurt and I put ice on it. It doesn't seem to help me. And
Sure.
then on top of what I've learned, to me, it's not the most sense out there. So I don't do it. But, I tell people if it works for you, go ahead and do it. I have zero problem with that.
Yeah. No, I
Um,
mean, I always thought that when you get injured, I was like, well, it seems like your body's kind of swelling for a reason, right? Like, but
yeah.
I
But
never knew
again,
why or what. So
what you don't want is, for example, you wouldn't want to sprain your ankle and have that thing swell up and balloon up, and then you keep your feet down and you keep that stagnant fluid down there. That's
sure,
not going to be great.
sure, sure,
But if you
sure.
can lie on your back, get your foot all the way up, pump the ankle so that you help the fluid to get out of there,
Mm-hmm.
and just start moving on it, start walking on it as soon as you can, put some weight, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, that's going to normalize your movement and get you on the path to recovery as quick as possible, basically.
Yeah. No,
Now,
I think that
and
I
then
think so.
so that would be like the first few days within an acute injury. Now, consulting a competent physical therapist, if you find a good one, it'll change your life.
Sure.
Um, just like any profession, though, there's bad, mediocre, good, very
Mm-hmm.
good, great, whatever. And so you have, it's a bell curve. It's a bell curve. So
Yep.
to find a great one is tough. But when you do, they know what they're talking about. If they've got great manual hands-on skills, they've got great, exercise strategies and other interventions they can use. I mean, it can really, really make a good difference for someone wanting to get back and get better. So,
Yeah.
um, the biggest thing that people, I think, don't do is they don't understand healthcare like any other business.
Right.
It's like they go to a physical therapy place, and trust me, there are a lot of bad physical therapy places out there. And it's usually not because of the physical therapist, it's because of the system they're placed in.
Sure.
Physical therapy clinics who accept insurance have had to increase the number of patients and caseload that each physical therapist sees in order to make the same amount of money over the past few years.
Mm,
So
okay.
that leads to physical therapists being overworked, burned out, and the quality of the care just goes down.
Sure.
So that makes it a tough environment for physical therapists to thrive. And when you've done that for years, then you start to really remove yourself from, best practice, best care that you could probably provide. And it's not really the provider's fault. It's just um, the nature of healthcare in the U.S. sometimes is tough.
Sure. That
But
makes a lot of
but if you
sense.
but if you find someone who is not affiliated with insurances and can really spend the time one on one with you, not handing you off to an assistant, really take care of your problem by providing quality care. I mean, it can be life changing for some people. And and the way you do that is that if you go somewhere and you don't like it, then you go somewhere else. It's a
Yes.
free market, and people
Yep.
people don't apply that concept to healthcare for some reason. They go
They
somewhere where their doctor said, "Hey, go get physical therapy." They give them a list of places. They
Mhm.
go to the one that's maybe close to their house,
Yep.
and then they're in there. And the thing is, most physical therapists are usually friendly,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
they go in and they build a friendly rapport with this person, and then they think that's what physical therapy is. They do a few weeks, maybe it helps a little, maybe not really. Thanks for being a nice physical therapist, and they're on their way. And it's like, okay, but you could have gotten a lot better with a lot better care. They just didn't know it.
Right. Right. It's good. It's a
So
good reminder to just try a few. It's not that
yeah,
all are bad. It's that some are bad. So,
yeah,
um,
and
no,
and so what I would do is, you know, a few tips to find a good physical therapist is, one, if you show up and they don't spend the whole session with you, they hand you off to an assistant. You're going there 2 or 3 times a week, and you only see the physical therapist once out of those multiple times. I would get out of there.
sure.
I would say, this is not what I'm here for. I would I'm not wanting to be handed off to a technician who has, maybe zero education or maybe very low education, but
Sure.
because in theory they are supervised by a physical therapist in the building, then they can run you through some exercises, and it's like, that's not physical therapy.
Sure.
Going to physical therapy to do 4 exercises, get a heat pack and some electrical stimulation, that is not what physical therapy is. And unfortunately, that's what happens in a lot of places.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
So
No, it's good. It's a good reminder for sure. Yeah. So I guess leading into your stuff, how can people maybe plug your stuff here. And if people want to get involved with you, they're in the area, they're looking for someone, how can
Sure,
they get in
yeah.
contact with you?
Yeah, so I have my own physical therapy business here in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. It's called Move It Physical Therapy, but it's also affiliated with Pickleball Doctor. I basically am mobile, so I go to people directly. I'm not in network with insurance, so I build my schedule however I want, whatever amount of time the patient needs,
Yep.
and whatever interventions they need. I'm not limited by or influenced by insurance whatsoever. So that gives me a lot of freedom to provide the best possible care for people and build my schedule to fit what they need as well. So,
It's great.
um, and then the other portion of the Pickleball Doctor is I do a lot of coaching. So I do a lot of lessons, clinics, and camps. I do Pickleball Doctor experience camps, which are kind of all over the United States. So if clubs or facilities want me to come out and run a camp, then that's certainly something that I do a lot. I've got one coming up in Richmond, Virginia, another one in South Carolina, and then one in the North Carolina mountains in October, and then I think one in Chicago later in this year. So
Cool.
yeah, that's something that people seem to really like. Is I come out and I tailor the camp to whatever the facility wants. So if they want, smaller groups or small half days, 2 days, whatever they want, we kind of build it to whatever they would like for their facility. So if there are clinics or camps out there, or facilities that want to get in touch, to just email me at thepickleball.doctor@gmail.com, and we'll get it going. So
Great. Sweet. Love the
it's
love that you do that as well. So
yeah. So that's like another great part about being around Ben that I've been involved in is just I just get to be around his pickleball mind, and
yeah.
he's got a company named called Pickleball Getaways, where they do international pickleball camps basically, and experiences like that. So I get to go on some of those and coach there, and things like that. So
Great.
it's just being around. It's not every day that you get to
Yeah.
be around someone who's the best in the world at something, and
Right.
it's been pretty cool to be with Ben for a couple of years now and to just be around that. So
Right.
I've been lucky. I've been lucky to have that.
That's great. Yeah, I know it's cool I'm sure your perspective on that's probably cooler than a lot of people's because you've known him for a while. So,
Yeah, no, I mean,
yeah,
it's just, and it's just funny to how my life and career have evolved because of pickleball, and the doors and people I've met through pickleball. It's just brought me into various places and environments that I probably wouldn't have thought about 10 years ago. So it's been kind of
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. It's a crazy ride we're all on for sure. So,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, thanks for chatting, and it was really great to hear what you had to say. So, I think that'll be really helpful for a lot of people. So, thanks again
Yeah,
for
for
putting
sure.
on this. Yeah.